The hostess's words hung in the air like a slap. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we can't accommodate you without a reservation." Eleanor stood there, her weathered hands clutching her purse, the birthday brooch her late husband had given her pinned to her cardigan. Alone on her 80th birthday, turned away from the restaurant where she and Robert had celebrated every special occasion for 47 years. But what happened next would remind her, and everyone who witnessed it, that kindness from strangers can change everything in an instant. If this story touches your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more stories that celebrate the unexpected connections that make life beautiful. Eleanor Matthews had been looking forward to her birthday for weeks, though not with the excitement most people anticipate their special day. Since Robert passed 3 years ago, birthdays had become more about honoring traditions than celebration. The reservation at Bellini's was supposed to be her gift to herself, a way to feel close to Robert again, sitting at their usual corner table where they'd shared countless anniversary dinners, birthday celebrations, and the night he'd proposed back in 1963. She'd dressed carefully that morning, choosing her pale blue dress, Robert's favorite, and the pearl earrings he'd given her on their 50th anniversary. Her daughter Jane had offered to drive in from Pittsburgh, but Eleanor had insisted she stay put. "It's just another day," she'd told Jane on the phone. "I'm perfectly capable of treating myself to dinner." What she didn't say was that she needed to do this alone, to sit with her memories without having to put on a brave face for anyone else. The bus had dropped her off a block from Bellini's, and despite the April chill, Eleanor had enjoyed the short walk, taking in the familiar storefronts of the neighborhood where she'd spent most of her adult life. When she'd called last week, the young man who answered had assured her they'd have space. "We're never fully booked on Tuesday evenings," he'd said confidently. "Just come in around 6, and we'll seat you right away." But now, standing before the sleek new hostess podium, so different from the worn wooden stand that had been there during Robert's lifetime, Eleanor faced a different reality. "I don't see any reservation under Matthews," the hostess said, her acrylic nails clicking against the tablet screen. She couldn't have been more than 25, with perfectly styled hair and a look of practiced sympathy that didn't reach her eyes. "And I'm afraid we're completely booked tonight. There's a pharmaceutical conference in town." "But I called," Eleanor said, her voice smaller than she intended. The young man said Tuesdays are never busy. The hostess sighed. "That would be Kevin. He's new and shouldn't have told you that." "I'm sorry, but without a reservation, there's nothing I can do. Perhaps you'd like to try the cafe across the street?" Eleanor felt heat rising to her cheeks. The cafe across the street served pre-made sandwiches and watery coffee. It wasn't Bellini's, with its soft lighting and the corner table where Robert had reached across and held her hand every single time they dined there. "It's my 80th birthday," she said quietly, not meaning to play that card but finding the words tumbling out anyway. "My husband and I came here for 47 years. The hostess's expression softened slightly. "That's lovely, but I still can't." "She can have my table." The voice came from behind Eleanor, deep and decisive. She turned to find a man in his late 30s standing there, a little girl of about 7 or 8 holding his hand. He wore a simple button-down shirt and jeans, nothing fancy, but there was a kindness in his eyes that made Eleanor's throat tighten. "Sir, I can't just," the hostess began. "I made a reservation for 2, the man continued, stepping forward. "My name's Daniel Reeves. My daughter Lily and I would be honored to share our table with this lady." He looked down at Eleanor with a warm smile. "That is, if you wouldn't mind dining with a chatty second grader and her dad?" Eleanor was speechless, her eyes suddenly damp. The little girl, Lily, looked up at her with curious eyes. "It's your birthday?" she asked. "We have candles in my backpack. Dad always brings them for special occasions." The hostess looked between them, clearly calculating whether this violated some policy. Finally, she shrugged. "I suppose that would work. Follow me, please." As they walked through the restaurant, Eleanor felt a gentle hand on her elbow, Daniel, making sure she navigated the crowded space safely. It was such a small gesture, but it reminded her so much of Robert that she had to blink back tears. The table wasn't their usual corner spot, that had long since been replaced during the restaurant's renovation, but it was by a window overlooking the small garden where white lights twinkled in the early evening darkness. As Daniel pulled out her chair, Eleanor felt a wave of gratitude so intense it nearly overwhelmed her. "Thank you," she managed. "This is very kind of you both." Daniel smiled as he helped Lily into her seat. "It's nothing. Birthdays should be special, especially the big ones." He leaned in slightly. "And between us, I think the hostess could use a lesson in customer service." That startled a laugh out of Eleanor, the first genuine laugh she'd had in weeks. As they settled in, Lily immediately launched into conversation, asking Eleanor questions about her life with the unfiltered curiosity only children possess. "Have you really been coming here for 47 years? That's like, forever. Were the dinosaurs still around?" "Lily," Daniel admonished gently, but Eleanor waved him off. "It does seem like forever ago," she said, smiling at the child's wide eyes. "The first time my husband brought me here, I was wearing a yellow dress with a white collar, and he was so nervous he knocked over his water glass. The waiter back then, his name was Giuseppe, didn't miss a beat. Swooped in with extra napkins and made a joke that had us both laughing." As the evening progressed, Eleanor found herself sharing stories she hadn't told in years, about Robert's terrible singing voice but how he'd serenade her anyway, about their 3 children and 7 grandchildren scattered across the country, about the garden they'd tended together for decades until Robert's arthritis made it too difficult. In turn, she learned about Daniel, a high school English teacher raising Lily alone since his wife had left them when Lily was just 2. She decided parenthood wasn't for her, he explained without bitterness while Lily was in the restroom. "It was hard at first, but we found our rhythm." "You're doing a wonderful job," Eleanor told him, watching as he carefully cut Lily's chicken parmesan into bite-sized pieces when she returned. "She's delightful." The meal itself was excellent, though Eleanor noted that Bellini's marinara sauce wasn't quite as robust as it had been in Giuseppe's day. But the company, that was unexpected perfection. By the time their server brought out a small tiramisu with a candle stuck in it, courtesy of Lily's backpack supply, Eleanor felt lighter than she had in years. As Lily led an enthusiastic if off-key rendition of "Happy Birthday," Eleanor noticed other diners smiling and joining in. The hostess watched from her podium, a thoughtful expression replacing her earlier indifference. "Make a wish," Lily commanded when the song ended. Eleanor closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of the candle's small flame. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't wish for one more day with Robert. Instead, she wished for more moments like this, unexpected kindness, new connections, the reminder that she was still very much a part of the world. When she opened her eyes and blew out the candle, Lily clapped delightedly. "What did you wish for?" "Lily, you know she can't tell or it won't come true," Daniel said with a wink at Eleanor. As they finished their dessert, Eleanor reached into her purse for her wallet, but Daniel shook his head firmly. "Absolutely not. It's your birthday." "But you've already done so much," Eleanor protested. "Sharing your table, your evening." "Ms. Matthews," he said, using the name he'd learned during their conversation, "you've given us something too. Lily and I were just going to have our usual Tuesday dinner and go home to grade papers and finish homework. Instead, we got to hear your stories and be part of your special day." He glanced at his daughter, who was nodding vigorously. "That's worth a lot more than picking up the check." When it was time to leave, Daniel insisted on calling a rideshare service to take Eleanor home, despite her protests that she was perfectly capable of taking the bus. "It's getting chilly," he said. "And it's your birthday. Let us do this." As they waited outside for the car to arrive, Lily suddenly tugged on Eleanor's hand. "We should exchange phone numbers. Dad says I need more pen pals for my writing practice." Daniel looked embarrassed. "Lily, Ms. Matthews might not." "I'd love that," Eleanor interrupted. The idea of receiving letters from this bright-eyed child filled her with unexpected joy. She hadn't had anyone to correspond with since her friend Margaret moved to Florida last year. They exchanged information, and as Eleanor's car pulled up, Lily threw her arms around Eleanor's waist in a fierce hug. "Happy birthday. I'm glad the mean hostess lady didn't make you leave." Eleanor hugged her back, then straightened to shake Daniel's hand. But he stepped forward and gave her a gentle hug instead. "Happy birthday, Eleanor. It was truly our pleasure." As the car pulled away, Eleanor watched them through the rear window, the tall figure and the small one, hands linked, waving until they disappeared from view. She settled back against the seat, her heart full in a way it hadn't been since Robert's passing. The next morning, Eleanor woke to a text message from Daniel with a photo attached. It showed Lily at their kitchen table, tongue poking out in concentration as she wrote on a piece of paper decorated with stickers. The message read, "First pen pal letter underway. Fair warning, expect lots of questions about what games were like in the olden days. Hope you had a good night." Eleanor smiled and carefully typed back a reply, her fingers moving slowly over the phone screen her grandson had insisted she learn to use. "Looking forward to it. Please tell Lily that yes, we did have electricity in the olden days, but our games required more imagination and fewer batteries." Over the following weeks, Eleanor and Lily exchanged letters, real ones, written on paper and sent through the mail at Lily's insistence because it's more magical that way. Daniel would occasionally text photos or updates, and twice they'd met for ice cream at the park near Eleanor's apartment. A month after her birthday, Eleanor received a call from Bellini's. It was the manager, apologizing for her experience and inviting her to return as their guest. "We've implemented some changes in how we handle our regular customers," he explained. "One of our staff was quite moved by what happened on your birthday." When Eleanor arrived the following week, with a proper reservation this time, she was surprised to find the hostess was the same young woman from her birthday. But the girl's demeanor had completely changed. "Ms. Matthews," she said warmly, "we have your regular corner table ready. And this is for you." She handed Eleanor an envelope. Inside was a gift card and a note, "For your next birthday. Bring your friends. We'll make sure there's room for everyone." The staff at Bellini's. Eleanor thanked her and followed her to the table, not exactly the same corner where she and Robert had sat for all those years. That space was now part of an expanded bar area, but close enough that it felt right. As she settled in, she noticed a small vase with a single yellow rose, Robert's signature gift. "The gentleman who shared his table with you on your birthday called ahead," the hostess explained, seeing Eleanor's questioning look. "He said yellow was significant." Eleanor touched the soft petal of the rose, remembering the yellow dress she'd worn on her first date with Robert, the story she'd shared with Daniel and Lily. "Yes," she said softly. "Yes, it is." As she unfolded her napkin, Eleanor's phone buzzed with a text. It was from Daniel. Lily wanted to make sure the rose was there. "Enjoy your dinner. Our table is always open if you ever want company." Eleanor looked around the restaurant, at the couples leaning toward each other over candlelight, at the families with children, at the groups of friends laughing together. For so long after Robert died, she'd felt invisible in these spaces, a solitary figure in a world designed for connection. But now, as she sat at her table with her yellow rose and her phone full of messages, Eleanor realized that her wish had already come true. She wasn't alone anymore. One act of kindness on her 80th birthday had opened a door she thought had closed forever. She picked up her menu, smiling at the thought of telling Lily about her dinner in her next letter. Life, Eleanor decided, still had surprises in store, even at 80. Especially at 80. And somewhere, she was certain, Robert was smiling too.